Aber hier müssen wir serious sein, okay? Ich mache sogar mein Subgoal weg dafür. Bei dem Video müssen wir jetzt serious sein, Chat. Könnt ihr euch 18 Minuten und 38 Sekunden benehmen? Kriegt ihr das hin, dass wir uns 18 Minuten und 38 Sekunden benehmen? Ich habe keine Ahnung, worum es bei dem Video geht, aber schauen wir einfach mal, okay? Also, this equation will change how you see the world, heißt das Video. Was heißt Equation, Chat? Alexa, was heißt Equation auf Deutsch?
Inquisition auf Deutsch heißt.
Was? Alexa, was heißt Equation auf Deutsch?
Inquisition auf Deutsch.
Alexa,
heißt.
Schnauze jetzt.
Entschuldigung, das weiß ich leider nicht.
Besser ist es.
What's the connection between a dripping faucet, the Mandelbrot set, a population of rabbits, thermal convection in a fluid, and the firing of neurons in your brain? It's this one simple equation.
Ich habe jetzt schon nichts verstanden.
Let's say you want to model a population of rabbits. If you have X rabbits this year, how many rabbits will you have next year? Well, the simplest model I can imagine is where we just multiply by some number, the growth rate R, which could be, say, 2, and this would mean the population would double every year.
Effects.
And the problem with that is it means the number of rabbits would grow exponentially forever. So
Nein,
I
weil
can
die
add the
sterben.
term 1 minus x to represent the constraints of the environment. And here I'm imagining the population x is a percentage of the theoretical maximum. So it goes from 0 to 1. And as it approaches that maximum, then this term goes to 0. And that constrains the population. So this is the logistic map. Xn plus 1 is the population next year, and xn is the population this year. And if you graph the population next year versus the population this year, you see it is just an inverted parabola. It's the simplest equation you can make that has a negative feedback loop. The bigger the population gets over here, the smaller it'll be the following year. So let's try an example. Let's say we're dealing
Ich blick gar nichts. Bin ich irgendwie retarded? Ich verstehe legit nichts.
with a particularly active group of rabbits. So R equals 2.6. And then let's pick a starting population of 40% of the maximum, so 0.4, and then times 1 minus 0.4, and we get 0.624. Okay, so the population increased in the first year. But what we're really interested in is the long-term behavior of this population. So we can put this population back into the equation.
Ich schwör, wenn Danny sich das Video anschaut, dann löscht sich einfach seine Welt. Oder? Kann das sein? Es löst sich einfach alles so langsam auf.
And to speed things up, you can
I don't
actually
feel so good.
type 2.6 times answer times 1 minus answer, get 0.61. So the population dropped a little. Hit it again, 0.619, 0.613, 0.617, 0.615, 0.616.
Warum kommt immer was anderes raus? Was? What the fuck? Hä? Ich versteh's nicht.
615. And if I keep hitting enter here, you see that the population doesn't really change. It has stabilized, which matches what we see in the wild. Populations often remain the same as long as births and deaths are balanced. Now, I want to make a graph of this iteration. You can see here that it's reached an equilibrium value of 0.615.
Da verstehe ich's mehr. Jetzt verstehe ich's mehr, okay? Mit Taschenrechner kann ich nichts anfangen, Chat. Ich brauche das visuell.
Now, what would happen if I changed the initial population? I'm just going to move this slider here, and what you see is the first few years change, but the equilibrium...
Es balanced sich immer wieder ein, ne? What the fuck, bro? Also, wisst ihr, was ich meine? Ihr wisst sicher, was ich meine. Ich verstehe es, glaube ich, ja? Ich habe nur 3 Minuten gebraucht, um es zu verstehen.
Equilibrium population remains the same. So we can basically ignore the initial population. So what I'm really interested in is how does this equilibrium population vary depending on R, the growth rate? Well, as you can see, if I lower the growth rate, the equilibrium population decreases. That makes sense. And in fact, if R goes below 1, well then the population drops and eventually goes extinct. So what I want to do is make another graph where on the x-axis I have R, the growth rate, And on the y-axis, I'm plotting the equilibrium population, the population you get after many, many, many generations.
Ja.
Okay, for low values of R, we see the populations always go extinct, so the equilibrium value is 0.
Ja.
But once R hits 1, the population stabilizes
Holy
onto
shit.
a constant value.
Baby boomer.
And the higher R is, the higher the equilibrium population.
Aha.
So far, so good. But now comes the weird part. Once R passes 3, the graph splits in 2.
What the fuck? Warte mal, wenn er was ist? Wenn er was ist?
Once R hits 1, the population stabilizes onto a constant value.
Yeah.
And the higher R is, the higher the equilibrium population. So far, so good. But now comes the weird part. Once R passes 3, the graph splits in 2.
What the
Why? What's happening? Well, no matter how many times you iterate the equation, it never settles onto a single constant value. Instead, it oscillates back and forth between 2 values. One year the population is higher, the next year lower, and then the cycle repeats. The cyclic nature of populations is observed in nature too. One year there might be more rabbits, and then fewer the next year, and more again the year after. As R continues to increase.
Aber warte mal, das ist jetzt dann, es sind nicht zwei gleiche wegen dem Ding, sondern es ist eines für das, also Jahr für Jahr. Also hier, das ist das eine Jahr, das ist das nächste Jahr, das ist das nächste Jahr, das ist das nächste Jahr, bla bla bla. Aber wie kann denn dann, also jedes Jahr halbiert sich die Hasenrate und dann verdoppelt sie sich wieder, oder wie? Und das hier ist es, wenn sie, das sind die Jahre, wo die Viecher sterben und das sind die Jahre, wo die Viecher boomen. Okay? Okay. Ich glaube, ich verstehe es bisher. Aber warum ist das so?
Spreads apart and then each one splits again. Now, instead of oscillating back and forth between 2 values, populations go through a 4-year cycle before repeating.
Aha.
Since the length of the cycle or period has doubled, these are known as period doubling bifurcations.
Ja, okay.
And as R increases further, there are more period doubling bifurcations. They come
T-tours?
faster and faster, leading to cycles of 8, 16,
T-tours?
32, 64, and then at R equals 3.57, chaos. The population never settles down at all. It bounces around as if at random. In fact, this equation provided one of the first methods of generating random numbers on computers. It was a way to get something unpredictable from a deterministic machine.
Okay.
There is no pattern here, no repeating. Of course, if you did know the exact initial conditions,
CSGO-Profis hassen diesen Trick, kein Pattern.
you could calculate the values exactly. So they are considered only pseudo-random numbers. Now you might expect the equation to be chaotic from here on out, but as R increases, order returns. There are these windows of stable periodic behavior amid the chaos. For example, at R equals 3.83, there is a stable cycle with a period of 3 years. And as R continues to increase, it splits into 6, 12, 24, and so on before returning to chaos. In fact, this one equation contains...
What the fuck? Hä? Heißt so viel wie mehr löchriger Käse ist gleich weniger Käse? Da bin ich jetzt raus.
Contains periods of every length. 37, 51, 1052, whatever you like if you just have the right value of R.
Oh, T-Tours.
Looking at this bifurcation diagram, you may notice that it looks like a fractal. The large-scale features look to be repeated on smaller and smaller scales. And sure enough, if you zoom in, you see that it is, in fact, a fractal. Arguably the most famous fractal is the
Was ist ein Fractal?
Mandelbrot set. The plot twist here is that the bifurcation diagram is actually part of the Mandelbrot set. How does that work?
Und was ist das da?
Well, quick recap on the Mandelbrot set. It is based on this iterated equation. So the way it works is you pick a number c, any number in the complex plane, and then start with z equals 0. And then iterate this equation.
Ach so, ein Bruchteil einfach, oder was? Er hat gesagt, der Graph, also von den Sachen, wie sie splitten, ist ein Fractal. Aber was ist ein Fractal in dem Fall? Ein Bruchteil. Es ist doch kein, der Graph, wie er splittet, ist doch kein Bruchteil. Was macht das für einen Sinn? Das macht doch keinen Sinn. Wie kann man denn zu einer Grafik sagen, das ist ein Bruchteil? Ein Teil, der sich immer wiederholt? Also sowas wie Pi. Im Prinzip. Oder wie? Und was ist das, was er jetzt da gezeigt hat? Dieses Teil? Was ist das da? Was ist das?
Here is that the in fact a fractal. Arguably the most famous fractal is the Mandelbrot set.
The Mandelbrot Set? Ach so, Mandelbrot-Set. Was hat auf einmal Mandelbrot damit zu tun? Mandelbrotmenge. Hä? Was ist denn das jetzt? Die Mandelbrotmenge, benannt nach Benoit Mandelbrot, ist die Menge der komplexen Zahlen, für welche durch die Iteration z0 ist gleich 0, zn plus 1 ist gleich zn hoch 2 plus c. Definierte Folge zn. Ich bin zu lange aus der Schule raus, um zu wissen, was das bedeutet. Aber das ist ein Eurozeichen, glaube ich. Beschränkt ist. Geometrisch als Teil der gaußschen Zahlenebene interpretiert, ist die Mandelbrotmenge ein Fraktal, das im allgemeinen Sprachgebrauch oft Apfelmännchen genannt wird. Was? Hä? Was für Apfelmännchen? Ich habe das noch nie gehört. Bilder davon können erzeugt werden, indem ein Pixelraster auf die Zahlenebene gelegt wird und so jedem Pixel ein Wert von c zugeordnet wird. Wenn die Folge von entsprechend c beschränkt ist also zur Mandelbrotmenge gehört, wird das Pixel zum Beispiel schwarz gefärbt und ansonsten weiß. Das ist dieses Up-Down, oder wie? Wird stattdessen die Farbe danach bestimmt, wie viele Folgenelemente berechnet werden müssen, bis feststeht, dass die Folge nicht beschränkt ist, entsteht ein sogenanntes Geschwindigkeitsbild der Mandelbrotmenge. Die Farbe jedes Pixels gibt an, wie schnell die Folge mit jedem betreffenden c gegen unendlich strebt.
The plot twist here is that the bifurcation diagram is actually part of the Mandelbrot set.
Oh, Plot Twist.
How does that work? Well, quick recap on the Mandelbrot set. It is based on this iterated equation. So the way it works is you pick a number c, any number in the complex plane, and then start with z equals 0. And then iterate this equation over and over again. If it blows up to infinity, well then the number c is not part of the set. But if this number remains finite after unlimited iterations, well then it is part of the Mandelbrot set. So let's try, for example, c equals 1. So we've got 0 squared plus 1 equals 1, then 1 squared plus 1 equals 2, 2 squared plus 1 equals 5, 5 squared plus 1 equals 26. So pretty quickly you can see that with c equals 1, this equation is going to blow up. So the number 1 is not part of the Mandelbrot set.
Okay, jetzt verstehe ich.
What if we try c equals negative 1? Well, then we've got 0 squared minus 1 equals negative 1. Negative 1 squared minus 1 equals 0. And so we're back to 0 squared minus 1 equals negative 1. So we see that this function is going to keep oscillating back and forth.
Aha. Warte. 0 hoch 2 minus 1 ist minus 1, obviously, weil 0 hoch 2 ist 0. Und dann erhöht man das auf 1. Dann minus 1 hoch 2 ist minus 1 ist 0. Nein, ist 1, minus 1 ist 0, ja. Und dann, warte mal, hä? Was ändert sich? Warte mal, ich muss mir das vorher nochmal anschauen. Also bei dem vorher hat er wegen 1 geschaut, okay? Das heißt 1 am Schluss. Und dann ist es 1. 0 hoch 2 plus 1 ist 1. Dann geht man 1 hoch. Warte mal, wieso geht man 1 hoch? Nein, man nimmt das Ergebnis von vorher, oder? Das Ergebnis von vorher ist dann immer das hier, ne? Also sprich, wenn du minus 1 nimmst, dann hast du das hier als Start. Das Ergebnis davon kommt dann hier hin. Und das Ergebnis davon kommt dann wieder hier hin. Okay, I get it, okay.
Forth between negative 1 and 0, and so it'll remain finite, and so c equals negative 1 is part of the Mandelbrot set.
Ja, aber was ist das jetzt, wenn das Teil vom Mandelbrot ist? Dann ist es eine Mandel im Brot, oder wie? Nein, aber legit, was bringt das zu wissen? Hat das irgendeinen Sinn?
Now, normally when you see pictures of the Mandelbrot set, it just shows you the boundary between the numbers that cause this iterated equation to remain finite and those that cause it to blow up. But it doesn't really.
Dann liegt es auf dem Graphen. Ja, schon, klar, aber was bringt das zu wissen, ob da die Zahl auf dem Graphen liegt oder nicht?
show you how these numbers stay finite. So what we've done here is actually iterated that equation thousands of times and then plotted on the z-axis the value that that iteration actually takes. So if we look from the side, what you'll actually see is the bifurcation diagram. It is part of this Mandelbrot set.
Das check ich nicht. Legit, ich check's nicht. Ich check's nicht. Das verstehe ich nicht. Also, das ist das Normale, um zu schauen, was für eine Zahl nicht unendlich ist in diesem Teil und halt Teil davon ist, haben sie es halt 1000-mal iterated, also durchlaufen lassen und dann ist es gefärbt. Oder das verstehe ich nicht, das muss ich mir nochmal anschauen.
So what we've done here is actually iterated that equation thousands of times and then plotted on the z-axis the value that that iteration actually takes.
Das verstehe ich nicht. Mandelbrot drehen, Z-Achse von dem ist der Hasengraph. Ja, aber was hat das denn miteinander zu tun? Hä? Also sie haben jetzt das Mandelbrot-Ding einfach voll auf durchlaufen lassen. Also so ganz oft durchlaufen lassen. Und auf der Z-Achse, die du von oben natürlich nicht siehst, wenn du es dann drehst, dann kommt der Hasengraph drin vor. Also genau dasselbe, was er halt, also da kommt genau dieses selbe Unendlichkeitsmuster raus. Oder Endlichkeitsmuster, was halt beim Hasengraph auch der Fall war, oder? Es zeigt, dass der Hasengraph nicht random ist. Bei -1 ist zwischen zwei Zahlen gesprungen, deswegen teile ich das in 2. Ach so! Weil bei -1 ist es immer 0, -1, ne? Und deswegen sind es so zwei Dinge, die sich teilen, wie beim Hasengraph vorher. Okay, okay.
So if we look from the side, what you'll actually see is the bifurcation diagram. It is part of this Mandelbrot set. So what's really going on here? Well, what this is showing us is that all of the numbers in the main cardioid, they end up stabilizing.
Was zum Teufel ist ein Cardioid? Eine Herzkurve. Ich hasse Cardio.
Onto a single constant value. But the numbers in this main bulb, well, they end up oscillating back and forth between
Bulb ist Glühbirne, das weiß ich.
two values. And in this bulb, they end up oscillating between 4 values. They've got a period of 4. And then 8, and then 16, 32, and so on.
Ja, weil es halt Zahlen gibt, wenn du halt nicht, also bei -1 ist es zwischen 2 gesprungen, aber es gibt andere Zahlen, keine Ahnung, was jetzt so ein Beispiel ist, sagen wir jetzt einfach mal als Beispiel, es ist, keine Ahnung, -3, dann springt es zwischen 4 hin und her, ne? Als Beispiel jetzt, ne?
On, and then you hit the chaotic part. The chaotic part of the bifurcation diagram happens out here on what's called the needle of the Mandelbrot set, where the Mandelbrot set gets really thin. And you can see this medallion here that looks like a smaller version of the entire
Der Needle heißt übrigens Nadel und Medaillon ist ein Steak.
Mandelbrot set. Well, that corresponds to the window of stability in the bifurcation plot with a period of 3. Now, the bifurcation diagram only exists on the real line because we only put real numbers into our equation. But all of these bulbs
Real Numbers sind natürliche Zahlen, oder? Nein, reelle Zahlen, oder? Ja.
off of the main cardioid, well, they also have periodic cycles of, for example, 3 or 4 or 5. And so you see these repeated ghostly images if we look in the z-axis. Effectively, they're oscillating between these values as well.
What the fuck?
Personally, I find this extraordinarily beautiful. But if
Scheiß Nerd.
you're more practically minded, you may be asking, but does this equation actually model populations of animals? And the answer is yes, particularly in the controlled environments scientists have set up in labs. But what I find even more amazing is how this one simple equation applies to a huge range of totally unrelated areas of science. The first major experimental confirmation came from a fluid dynamicist named Libchaber. He created a small rectangular box with mercury inside, and he used a small temperature gradient to induce convection. Just 2 counter-rotating cylinders of fluid inside his box. That's all the box was large enough for. And of course, he couldn't look in and see what the fluid was doing, so he measured the temperature using a probe in the top. And what he saw was a regular spike, a periodic spike in the temperature. That's like when the logistic equation converges on a single value.
Ja.
But as
Verstehe
he
ich.
increased the temperature gradient, a wobble developed on those rolling cylinders at half the original frequency.
Ja.
The spikes in temperature were no longer the same height. Instead, they went back and forth between 2 different...
Kurze Frage an der Stelle. Warum gab es vor ein paar hundert Jahren einen, der sich eine Box genommen hat, dort drinnen Wasser gekocht hat, 2 verschiedene Flüssigkeiten, die rotieren und dann ein Thermometer reinsteckt? Was genau wollte der damit wissen? Also, jetzt ernsthaft. Warum macht man sowas?
heights. He had achieved period 2. And as he continued to increase the temperature, he saw period doubling again. Now he had 4 different temperatures before the cycle repeated. And then 8. This was a pretty spectacular confirmation of the theory in a beautifully crafted experiment. But this was only the...
Hä? Quecksilber war zu kalt zum Trinken? Ah, okay.
the beginning. Scientists have studied the response of our
einmal
eyes
Vlog.
and salamander eyes to flickering lights. And what they find is a period doubling. That once the light reaches a certain rate of flickering, our eyes only respond to every other flicker. It's amazing in these papers to see the bifurcation diagram emerge, albeit a bit fuzzy because it comes from real-world data. In another study, scientists gave rabbits a drug that sent their hearts into fibrillation. I guess they felt there were too many rabbits out there. I mean, if you don't know what fibrillation is, it's where your heart beats in an incredibly irregular way and doesn't really pump any blood, so if you don't fix it, you die. But what they found was, on the path to fibrillation, they found the period doubling route to chaos. The rabbit started out with a periodic beat, and then it went into a 2 cycle, 2 beats close together, and then a 4 cycle, 4 different beats before it repeated again, and eventually aperiodic behavior. Now, what was really cool about this study was they monitored the heart in real time and used chaos theory to determine when to apply electrical shocks to the heart to return it to periodicity. And they were able to do that successfully. So they used chaos to control a heart and figure out a smarter way to deliver electric shocks to set it beating normally again. That's pretty amazing. And then there is the issue of the dripping faucet. Most of us, of course, think of dripping faucets as very regular periodic objects. But a lot of research has gone into finding that once the flow rate increases a little bit, you get period doubling. So now the drips come 2 at a time, da-dip, da-dip, da-dip. And eventually, from a dripping faucet, you can get chaotic behavior just by adjusting the flow rate. And you think, like, what really is a faucet? Well, there's constant pressure water and a constant size aperture, and yet what you're getting is chaotic dripping. So this is a really easy chaotic system you can experiment with at home. Go open a tap just a little bit and see if you can get aperiodic dripping in your house. The bifurcation diagram pops up in so many different places that it starts to feel spooky. Now, I want to tell you something that'll make it seem even spookier. There was this physicist, Mitchell Feigenbaum, who was looking at when...
Warum sind alle Deutsch? Mandelbrot, Feigenbaum, Apfelmännchen.
...the bifurcations occur. He divided the width of each bifurcation section by the next one. And he found that ratio closed in on this number, 4.669, which...
6.9.
is now called the Feigenbaum constant. The bifurcations come faster and faster, but in a ratio that approaches this fixed value. And no one knows where this constant comes from. It doesn't seem to relate to any other known physical constant. So it is itself a fundamental constant of nature. What's even crazier is that it doesn't have to be the particular form of the equation I showed you earlier. Any equation that has a single hump, if you iterate it the way that we have, so you could use xn plus 1 equals sine x, for example. If you iterate that one again and again and again, you will also see bifurcations. Not only that, but the ratio of when those bifurcations occur will have the same scaling, 4.669. Any single hump function iterated will give you that fundamental constant. So why is this? Well, it's referred to as universality because there seems to be something fundamental and very universal about this process, this type of equation, and that constant value. In 1976, the biologist Robert May wrote a paper in Nature about this very equation. It sparked a revolution in people looking into this stuff. I mean, that paper's been cited thousands of times. And in the paper, he makes this plea that we should teach students about this simple equation because it gives you a new intuition for ways in which simple things, simple equations, can create very complex behaviors. And I still think that today we don't really teach this way. I mean, we teach simple equations and simple outcomes because those are the easy things to do and those are the things that make sense. We're not going to throw chaos at students, but maybe we should. Maybe we should throw at least a little bit, which is why I've been so excited about chaos and I'm so excited about this equation because, you know, how did I get to be 37 years old without hearing of the Feigenbaum constant?
Halt legit, Alter. Ich habe noch nie von irgendwas davon gehört, was er gerade erwähnt hat. Halt legit. Außer Sinus.
Ever since I read James Gleick's book, Chaos, I have wanted to make videos on this topic, and now I'm finally getting around to it, and hopefully I'm doing this topic justice because I find it incredibly fascinating, and I hope you do too. Hey, this video is supported by viewers like you on Patreon and by Fast Hosts.
Okay, aber jetzt ist nur noch Werbung. Hä, Bruder, das ist halt... Also, im Prinzip, was er damit sagen will, ist einfach... wir leben in einer Simulation, oder? Weil es gibt eine Konstante, wo niemand weiß, wo sie herkommt, die in allen Sachen vorkommt. Oder? Das ist doch die Kernaussage von dem Video. Es gibt eine Konstante, die Chaos wieder ordnet. Und niemand weiß, wo diese Konstante herkommt. Und niemand weiß, wieso sie existiert oder alles mögliche, aber man findet sie immer wieder. Und niemand redet drüber. So gefühlt. Das ist so die Kernaussage von dem Video, oder? Könnte man über alle Konstanten sagen? Nein, ich glaube, die anderen haben eine deutlich sinnvollere Erklärung, oder? So Pi oder so zum Beispiel. Und in der Konstante kommt 69 vor. Ja, Elon Musk did this. Musk made this. Setzt die Aluhüte auf, Jungs. Niemand redet drüber, weil viele das nicht interessiert. Ja, true. True. Touch me and slip away. I can't hide.